Welcome back, guys. So today we have a video that's going to be very intriguing for those of you that are in the church. A lot of you look at Judas and you look at him and say, hey, this guy's evil, he's wicked, how could he betray Jesus? We're going to take a look at why this happened. There's some things in the Gospels that explain why he did this, and how does this correlate to Peter? So you have Peter, who denied Jesus 3 times at the cock crowing, and I've done a video about this specifically before, and I encourage you to go read that, and I encourage you to go and watch that. But this video is going to be about the betrayal of Judas. One betrays, one denies. Why is Peter looked at as a saint and Judas is looked at so horribly? Both of these people have roles that you're not going to understand at first, but I'm going to unveil those for you, okay? So when you look at Judas, it's no secret that he betrayed Jesus, right? He dipped his hand into the dish, he went out, he betrayed him, he sold him for 30 pieces of silver, and everybody knows the story, right? So there's 12 times in these Gospels where it states that Judas betrayed Jesus. Many times the Gospels go out of their way to point out, hey, Jesus was betrayed by Judas. Judas was a thief, all these things. And it does this on purpose. It's trying to villainize Judas to make him look so evil because of his act. But what if I told you that many Christians that are watching this video are already betraying Jesus and they don't even realize it? I'm going to explain what that means. So to outline this video and create a basis, I want you to understand something. If you look in the Gospels, you're going to see in Matthew chapter 10 and also in Luke, I believe chapter 6, I'm going to post these scriptures on the screen. What you're going to see is when the disciples are listed, it routinely lists Peter as the first disciple and Judas as the last disciple. Okay, so if you see these scriptures on the screen, you see here in Matthew, it says Peter was the first, and then it goes down to Judas, which it, of course, proclaims that Judas was the one who betrayed Jesus. This is done by design. Do you remember my last video where it said the last shall be first and the first shall be last? This is important to understand, and if you haven't seen that last video, I want you to go see it. So when Jesus says many that are last shall be first and the first shall be last, Judas and Peter are archetypes. Okay, I'm going to explain what that means. So now there's also the consideration that many people say, and Christians always, and I remember my father used to always bring up the point, and he says, well, we don't know why, but Judas was called friend in the garden. So you look here and you look at Matthew chapter 26, and you see that when they're in the garden, Judas says, greetings, Rabbi, and he kissed him. And he said, friend, do what you came to do. Then they came and laid hands on Jesus and seized him. Now, why is it that Judas gave Jesus a kiss? Okay. There's actually a proverb that states, and I'll show it here on the screen. It says, faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. Now, you can look at that one of two ways. One side will say, hey, he was giving him a kiss because he was deceiving Jesus. But then there's the other side that could say, hey, he was kissing Jesus because he was deceiving the audience. So it depends on how you're looking at this. I'm going to give you both sides of the coin and you can choose for yourself. Okay? But it's interesting here that Jesus said, friend, do what you came to do. There's also a proverb that states, whoso is partner with a thief hateth his own soul. And this is also important to realize. You know, a lot of these stories and allegories and all these things, they hide things in plain sight, and it's up to the reader to try to figure them out. Just like with a proverb that states, it's the glory of God to conceal a matter, but the honor of kings to search it out. So do you remember when Jesus said, ye are my friends if you do whatsoever I command you? Take a look here on the screen. In John chapter 15, it says, greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. Ye are my friends if you do whatsoever I command you. So now you see Jesus standing there and he's telling him, friend, do what you came to do. He's telling him to do what he came to do. Jesus already knows what he's going to do because they had just had the Passover Seder and he had told him, one of you shall betray me. And everybody said, is it I? Is it I? Is it I? And he says, it's the one that dips his hand in the dish, the same as he. And then of course you see the story where Judas goes out and he says, do what you have to do quickly. And he goes out and then he betrays him. He gives him the 30 pieces of silver. He hands him over. Now, there's one side here that could say, well, Judas was commanded to do it. He called him friend. Are you catching on to this? Do you remember the story where Peter is getting his feet washed. All right. Many people fail to understand what this parable or this allegory or this story is really trying to show, and I'm going to show it to you right now. Look at John chapter 13. It says, Peter saith unto him, Thou shalt never wash my feet. Jesus answered him, If I wash thee not, you have no part with me. And Peter said unto him, Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head. Jesus saith unto him, He that is washed needeth not save to wash his feet, but is clean every whit, and ye are clean, but not all. For he knew which should betray him. Therefore he said, Ye are not all clean. So this allegory of washing his feet, why is Jesus out of nowhere just washing all the disciples' feet? And why is he telling Peter that if I don't wash your feet, you have no part with me? Well, the answer is in Isaiah. Okay, so if you look in Isaiah, Isaiah says, Therefore my people shall know my name, which God's name is Jehovah. Therefore they shall know it in that day that I am he that doth speak. Behold, it is I. How beautiful upon the mountains are the feet of him that bringeth good tidings, that publisheth peace, and bringeth good tidings of good, that publisheth salvation, that says unto Zion, Thy God reigneth. Okay, so this is what's veiled in this story right here. Obviously, you're seeing Judas, oh, he's the evil one, he betrays Jesus, and that's the image that they're trying to portray here. They want to villainize Judas, all right? But what is he secretly saying here? He's washing the disciples' feet, and he's telling Peter, if your feet aren't washed, you have no part with me. Who did Jesus worship? He worshiped Jehovah. So what he's saying is if I don't wash your feet, you have no part with me. If your feet aren't washed, then you don't worship the same God that I do. This is what he's saying. You know, there's tons of things in these gospels that will point you to the truth, but you really have to take effort in trying to understand what's going on. If you don't have an understanding of the Tanakh, if you don't have an understanding of the Old Testament, you're not going to see these things. You know, Deuteronomy 29:29 says the secret things belong to Jehovah our God, but those things revealed belong to us and our children forever, that we might do all the words of this law. You have to know the law of God. All right. So these people and these disciples' feet are being washed, and he's saying, if I don't wash your feet, you have no part with me. Why? It's because he is saying that if your feet aren't washed, you don't worship the same God that I do. Now, how does this correlate to Judas? Okay. We've discussed this in other videos, but I want you to understand why the disciple Judas is being used here. If you knew the story of the Maccabees, you'd understand what's going on. The timeline of the end, when people are talking about the Great Tribulation and all those things, I don't want to get in great detail in this video, but essentially it'll take place from one point here to one point in the winter. So you have two different appointed times. You have a time where it's Shavuot, or the second Passover, which align together, and then you have the time of the end where it'll be in the winter. This is why Jesus says, pray your flight be not in the winter. And what does it mean by, pray your flight not come in the winter? It's the same illusion that God gave us when he took us out of Egypt. He said, I bear you on eagle's wings. You're supposed to put your trust in Jehovah. That's supposed to be your God. Same thing that was said in Ruth. When Ruth came out of her homeland and she became a convert and said, thy people shall be my people and thy God my God, Boaz said, let you get a full reward because you've taken trust in Jehovah, whose wings you are come to trust. So what's secretly being alluded to here is not everybody worships the same God that Jesus is worshiping. Many are errantly worshiping Jesus. Okay? But it goes even further than that. Okay? If you've read the book of the Maccabees, which used to be part of canon, up until a couple centuries ago, this was actually part of the 1611 King James Bible. So those that are saying KJV only, this book was part of your King James Bible. All right? But in the Maccabees, what you'll see Mattathias and Judas, who are leading a revolt against Antiochus Epiphanes. This is actually why you'll see that Judas was replaced by Mattathias in the book of Acts. They're trying to draw an allusion to these two people and this story in the book of the Maccabees. Now, what's significant that happened? So if you look at the book of the Maccabees, what you're going to see here is, look at 1 Maccabees chapter 1. It says, at that time there appeared in the land of Israel a group of traitorous Jews who had no regard for the law. Okay? And who had bad influence on many of the people. They said, let us come to terms with the Gentiles, for our refusal to associate with them has brought us nothing but trouble. This proposal appealed to many people, and some of them became so enthusiastic about it, they went about to the king and received from him permission to follow Gentile customs. They built in Jerusalem a stadium like those in the Greek cities. They had surgery performed to hide their circumcision, abandoned the Holy Covenant, and started associating with the Gentiles, and did all sorts of evil things. So the one who's traitorous to Jesus is the one not who's just simply just not confessing him. What this story is trying to show you is that the one who is betraying Jesus is the one who doesn't keep the laws of God as Jesus did, and the one who is not worshiping the God that Jesus worshiped. Is this hitting home? Is this starting to make sense? That's what's being displayed here. If you're not somebody that's keeping the law of Moses and keeping the law of God as Jesus did, you're already betraying Jesus because you're not walking as he walked, right? Look, I was a Christian for 30 years, okay? Again, it's very difficult to come to this conclusion that you should be keeping the law of Moses. Why? Because Paul is telling you the whole New Testament, all the epistles, not to keep the law of God. This is done by design. Why? Because we're supposed to seek God with all our heart, our soul, and our mind. Only the few who really search for it and search for the truth are going to find that. Why can I see these things in the New Testament? Look, it's for this very reason that I came out of Christianity. It's not because someone told me, hey, deny Jesus or let go of Jesus. It's because I started to understand these things. Yes, this is how I came out of Christianity. I started to understand all these things because I started to notice that I was supposed to be keeping the laws of God. And once I did that, my eyes were opened. I could see all these parallels. I could see all these illusions and all these things that are hidden in plain sight. And you can too. I mean, keep the law of Moses. Try it for 3 months. See what happens. You'll start to see things in a new light, just like this, and you'll start to realize what's really going on. But few are able to do it because God doesn't want a bunch of people who didn't seek after him. He wants a group of people who sought with all their heart, their soul, and their mind, and then he'll bring them back to Israel. Okay? And then you look at Peter and you say, well, Peter denied him. That's the point. When the day of Yehovah comes, you're going to have to do one of the two things.
You have all these rules and you think they'll save you.
I have one rule.
Oh, then that's the rule you'll have to break to know the truth.
Which is?
Tonight you're gonna break your one rule. And that's the point. You'll have to choose.
Every Christian has one rule, and that's do not deny Jesus. And if you want to know the truth, that's the rule you're going to have to break. If you want to find God, you're going to have to call upon his name. And it's a tough pill to swallow. I get it. But you can do it. You can overcome it. I promise you. All right? So you see Judas, and he's betrayed Jesus. And he's looked at as a horrible person amongst all Christian church members. How could he do this? How could Peter have done that? Right? You're going to have to do one of the two. The last shall be first, the first shall be last. Judas Maccabee was at the time of Hanukkah. Peter denied him on Passover. If you understand the story of Passover, Passover is the time when the Israelites were brought out of Egypt because they worshiped the God of Israel. They put their trust in Yehovah. It was the people who denied the lamb, the people who killed the lamb, that the destroyer didn't enter their houses. It wasn't the ones that worshiped the lamb. The problem is you see today is you have the church, which is spiritually Egypt. And what they're doing is they're worshiping the lamb. That was an Egyptian deity. And then you also have people in the church today that are assimilating with the Gentiles, keeping pagan customs. They've assimilated with the Gentiles, just like in the book of the Maccabees, that Judas Maccabee was fighting against. And they're keeping Easter, Christmas, Sunday worship. These are all pagan customs. So if you're someone that doesn't want to, quote unquote, betray Jesus, then you're supposed to be keeping the commandments of God. Okay? When the real Messiah comes, he's going to look to you like he's a betrayer. He's going to look like a Judas because he's going to tell you to worship the God of Israel. Matter of fact, do you know why it's actually stating that Judas was a thief? Well, if you recall, you'll see that Jesus says he comes as a thief. Now, if you look here on the screen, you're going to see that Judas was a thief. He had a bag in his hand. What are they drawing an allusion to? There's a proverb that states, "For the good man is not home, he has gone a long journey. He hath taken a bag of money with him, and will come home at the day appointed." When the day of Yehovah comes, it comes at a time appointed. I've discussed this in my last couple of videos. I don't want to go into great detail with it now. But from that time appointed up until the point of Hanukkah, That's going to be the time of the great tribulation that everybody's worried about. The ones who are faithful to God's covenant, who denied the lamb or had worshiped the God of Israel and denied that lamb, they'll go to Israel. The ones that haven't, those are the people like Judas who had betrayed Jesus by not keeping the law of Moses. So when you see Jesus at the end of the book of John, and Peter's asking about that disciple, he said, Jesus responds with, "If I will that he tarry till I come, what is that to thee?" You're going to go through that period and you're going to have a choice to make, and you're going to have to break that one rule. And I know this sounds dark, and I know it sounds, difficult to take in. I'm going to give you information that I know and I understand, whether it's difficult for you to bear it or not. All right? This is not a channel where I'm just going to try to look, I'm going to be very cognizant of the audience that I'm talking to, that this could be offensive. I get it. But truth is going to hurt in the beginning. Everybody that ascends and gets truth starts with a level of ignorance, and then you move past it. And you move past it, and you move past it. And eventually, if you gain the knowledge and the understanding that you should, you'll reign over those people that didn't have the knowledge. That's the point of Israel. We're supposed to be a nation of priests and kings and reign. We're going to give this type of knowledge. We're going to give the knowledge and understanding that's going to heal the nations. All right? Now, when you see Jesus and it says it's better for that man had he never been born, so what's he talking about? It could be one of two things. I'm going to give you both understandings. All right? If you look in the book of the Maccabees, you're going to see here where you see Mattathias is standing there, and he says, "Why was I born to see this?" He was angry because he was seeing the destruction of the people, his own people, and this persecution of the faithful. So Mattathias is standing here, and he's saying, "Why was I born to see this?" All right? Now, the other understanding you could look at is when Jesus is saying it's good for that man had he never been born. So the one who's not keeping the Torah and the commandments, he had never started. He had never kept the Torah. So if you understand what Jesus meant in John chapter 3 when it says you must be born again, you'll understand what this means. It means that person has never even been born again. If you're going to be someone that is born again, you have to understand what that means. It has nothing to do with whether you proclaim Jesus or not. What it has to do with is whether you are walking in God's laws or not. The Bible tells us that I will give you a new spirit, and you shall walk in my laws and keep my statutes, keep my judgments, and walk in them. And David, my servant, shall be king over them. So the king that comes, he's going to tell you to keep the commandments just like Jesus actually did. Jesus, when he was instructing people, he spoke in riddles and parables and things that were supposed to be, the truth is hidden from your eyes for a purpose. Why? Because you're supposed to seek with all your heart, your soul, and your mind and find the truth. Amidst all the religions of this world, you're supposed to be finding the truth. And the ones that have the truth, they're few and far between. So when you see a crowd doing everything going one way, and you look and you say, well, there's 2 billion Christians in the world, that's the point. You're supposed to come out of Babylon. You're supposed to flee, get out of the church. Once you know the truth and you're calling upon the God of Israel's name and you keep his laws, you'll realize this ain't the place for me. But everybody's going to have the same fate. Once you're in the church, in this time of the end, you're going to have to deny him, or you've already betrayed him and you haven't been keeping the commandments, but you're going to have to get to a point where you call upon the name of Yehovah and keep his laws and commands. That's what your task is to do. When you are in tribulation and all these curses are upon you, the purpose of the tribulation is to get you to call back upon the name of God and keep his laws and commandments and keep his covenant once again, and he will have mercy on you. So I hope this video wasn't too much. I know it's got a lot of details in it that might offend, but look, I can't dance around this kind of stuff. I'm going to give you what I know. And some people are asking me, well, why are you talking about so much New Testament? Well, I'm going to answer that for you. Look, I was a Christian for 30 years. I could go on here, and I will. I'll go in and I'll talk about the Torah, and I'll explain things in the Torah and help that specific audience. But I need to get the specific audience that is still in the church, and I need to awaken them. I need to get them to see things through a new lens so that they will want to go look at the Torah. Then I can help that person, right? I need to awaken people on this channel. I was in sales for about 22 years. And one of the fundamental things that they taught us is that you cannot sell a product, you cannot sell something to someone without creating a need. No one wants to buy a product, or no one wants to buy something from someone unless that client sees a need for the product. Does that make sense? So I can't go to this audience that doesn't see a need for the product. They have to see the need for it first. The other thing that I've learned about advertising is that there's two different ways to sell a product, or two different ways of advertising. You have a target audience, which is people that are already interested in your product, or you have awareness advertisement. What I'm trying to do on this channel is awareness advertising first. I need to create a library where people have an awareness that they need the product that I'm going to be selling them to. Does that make sense? You know, there's a scripture in Proverbs chapter 23, verse 23, and it says, "Buy the truth and sell it not. Also wisdom, understanding, and knowledge." When we're doing these YouTube channels and we're doing these channels to try to help people, we're selling them information. But if they don't see a need for the information we're giving them, they will not buy it. You know, this idea of buying and selling is taught throughout these parables. When you see Jesus, for example, in the parables where he's saying, "Go unto them that buy," when you see Jesus in these parables about the 10 virgins, you see this same illusion. It says, "Go to them that sell and buy for yourselves." He's talking about truth, understanding, wisdom. That's all I'm trying to do. I'm giving you wisdom, understanding, knowledge. And this is an avenue that I'm going to do it through right now, that I'm focusing on awareness advertising. Okay? So I didn't mean to get into too much of my sales background, but that's the key. You can't sell a product to somebody who doesn't see a need for it. Once they see the need, then you can go into, okay, here's this precept. Here's how you teach it. Here's how you keep it. Here's how you do it. So hopefully that makes sense. And so this video is for the people in the church. I have to take your own scriptures and the things that are going to point you in the right direction. I'm going to use those to try to show you the truth. I'm going to give you understanding. I'm going to give you knowledge. And now you can look at things and say, hey, he's right. I should be keeping the law of Moses. I don't want to be a betrayer. I want to worship the God of Israel. I want to walk the right path. That's why I'm going over these things in these videos. If you have any questions as to why I'm doing that. Okay? So I hope that makes sense. If you have any questions, leave the comments down below. I'll answer any questions you have. And just have a good rest of the day.